is somebody important here? Yeah, I know it's for me. Yeah, you know. That, like, when I come home, my dog ignores me, so yeah. I keep talking about my dog. I must be feeling guilty. So is everybody having fun this weekend? All right. It's been a really long road to get here, but I think you guys will all agree it's been worth it. Everywhere I've gone throughout the conference, the music has been inspiring, the panels thought-provoking, and the trade show buzzing. So give yourselves a hand. You guys really made this happen. But there's even more coolness in store. At 2:30, I want to let you guys know we're going to have sort of a field trip studio producers panel out at Bear Creek Studios with Sally Browder. So we will have limited transportation out front, but you can catch a shuttle at 2:30, and you might want to check that out if you're interested in engineering or producing. And let's see, that's sponsored by GarageBand.com. And also this afternoon, I have to make a special announcement because we will have a special surprise guest. I don't know, has anybody heard any rumors? No rumors? Okay. Well, Courtney Love is going to be in the house. So Courtney will be right here. She's going to do a Q&A from 6 to 7. I think till 7. It might go till midnight, but I think 6 to 7. So before that begins, you guys will be able to like leave some questions for her, and then we'll kind of do a, you know, questions with Courtney. It'll be very The View, okay? But right now, at this very moment, to my right is a groundbreaking musical legend. She's going to hate that. Who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. Amy Ray is an artist with a heart. As half of the Grammy Award-winning duo Indigo Girls, she's recorded some of the most breathtaking two-part harmonies since the Everly Brothers. She's blushing. An activist, she devotes hundreds of hours of time she doesn't have to causes near and dear to her heart. For over 10 years, her nonprofit record label, Damon, has championed independent artists by giving them grants instead of recoupable advances to record their work. I'm very pleased and very honored to introduce this woman who needs no introduction. Please give a warm rocker girl welcome to Amy Ray.
No, I appreciate that. And God, there's so many people in here I know. It's almost worse. Because I know if I'm lying about things. All right. I've been a touring musician for 17 years as half of the Indigo Girls. And for the first 8 years, we were independent. And we did everything for ourselves. When me and Emily started making records in '85, my own experiences of sexism in the music industry were limited to the condescending boy hairband clerks at the local music store, and you know what I mean, and my job at the record pressing plant. The boss insisted that I move out of the warehouse and become his private secretary, and I didn't type at that time. And he spent days laying on the sofa telling me of his sexual escapades, and but after I shunned his advances for a while, I convinced him to let me go back to the pressing vinyl area where I belonged. Later, as Emily and I made our way into the corporate structure, the sexism became more insidious and harder to quantify and really had larger ramifications on my life. When I was deciding what I wanted to talk about today, I called some people up that I trust and respect in the industry, and I want to just tell you who they are because they helped me out a lot. Susan Flutie, a writer and journalist, Evelyn McDonald, a writer as well, an activist, and works on a lot of punk music stuff. The former Rolling Stone editor Barbara Adair, Michael Bracey from Low Power FM Radio Coalition, Jennifer Toomey from thefutureofmusic.com, Dusty Hayes from The Point radio station in Minneapolis, and Vicky Starr from Girly Action. After I talk, I want to have time hopefully to play a couple songs and do a Q&A too. So. And also my girlfriend Jennifer, she's in here. She's right over there. She just came out with a book called Manifesto, and she stayed up really late last night helping me finish this. The scene me and Emily came up through in Atlanta was really a do-it-yourself scene, but it was very politically naive. We felt compelled to be independent, but we didn't really recognize the powers that we were fighting. In 1988, we were signed to Epic Records, and upon entering the corporate music world, I suddenly became aware of who I was fighting. The label gave us artistic freedom, and the money flowed when we were young and cute. But I realized with such a large profit-driven structure, I felt no investment in art or in the community. That's why 10 years ago I founded the independent record label Damon Records. Its purpose is to create a non-corporate infrastructure for musicians in my community. The label is politically active, and it's run as a co-op where the artists learn every aspect of the industry from booking to CD production. The reason this is important is that artists need to be their own advocate for their careers. The more you know how to do for yourself, the better your chances are at making a living and avoid getting screwed and becoming bitter. This goes double if you choose the major label path. One of the practices of major labels is to withhold knowledge from the artist. This is not unlike the plantation strategy of keeping the slaves from learning to read. Damon Records actually really informs my relationship with Epic. I've learned through Damon about environmental packaging and the best way to achieve this, and it's something that I really pushed on Epic, and they were actually responsive to it it took about 5 years, but after that, they started really working with us on that. I learned about placing ads in politically active publications, which I think is something you should always push your label to do. I also learned about supporting the Indie Coalition record stores, which is something we constantly are on Epic's back about. We've also gotten Sony to donate equipment and money to honor the Earth and the Zapatistas, which I don't know if they know about that. But after 20 years in the business, where are we now? 5 companies own all the major and minor labels. 4 companies own all the radio stations. 1 concert promotion company, SFX, which is now merged with the biggest radio company, Clear Channel, has bought out most of the local promoters. Napster and the internet and new cheap technology are causing an industry panic. While profits and sales are still huge for record companies, the number of artists enjoying exposure and financial security is actually getting smaller. That's the bad news. But the good news is that artists and consumers, I think, are so disgruntled with the mainstream they're turning toward the independent domain. For instance, Evelyn McDonald sees the backlash against Lilith Fair in the mainstream as ironically reinvigorating the indie scene for women. Witnessed Lady Fest, rockrgrl, and I went to Michigan this year and felt like it was as strong and diverse as ever. I think we know how the global economy and the merger mentality and new technology affect our lives. But I think the changes at radio are the least understood and one of the most impactful, and one of the areas where we can actually shift the paradigm. Currently, radio is about image over artist, centralized power over local communities, and is an area where women have the least self-determination. Now, I'm an environmentalist, and while I mean that literally in that I work to make sure Earth is protected from nuclear dumps and clear cutting and other examples of corporate irresponsibility, I am also an environmentalist when it comes to the health of our music scene. In our environment as musicians is radio, the media, the internet, the record labels and distribution networks, and the concert circuit. First, I want to talk about radio. Now, when Emily and I started touring in '85, college and community radio stations were numerous, accessible, and relatively free of sexism. As soon as college radio was strong enough to be deemed valuable, it was strip-mined for its hit factor at the whim of the major labels. Meanwhile, community radio stations began selling off their licenses to big corporations because they really couldn't afford the rent anymore. Reagan-era deregulation had already changed corporate radio, opening up new frequencies and lifting the restrictions on how long a radio station had to be owned before it could be resold. What this did is it ushered in entrepreneurs who didn't develop their station, but instead were just buying them to resell them for a profit later. The amount of time devoted to ads was also allowed to increase, which obviously meant the amount of time devoted to music was decreased. Now, the airwaves are actually a natural resource. They're like water or air, and the radio spectrum is actually taxpayer-owned property. Technically, you and I own radio. The stations that make up the National Association of Broadcasters were essentially given $70 billion of airwaves for free. The second deregulation, and the one that I think has almost sealed the fate of radio, is the 1996 Telecommunications Act. This removed all restrictions on national ownership and relaxed restrictions on how many stations one company could own in a city. So now, one company can own like 5 to 8 stations in one city, covering maybe 5 to 8 different formats. In 1996, the top 10 corporations controlled 600 radio stations. Today, 4 corporations control 1,200 radio stations. This scenario has a terrible impact on artists and on the community. And I want to say that I realized this was happening when me and Emily started going into these stations, and they have these program IDs, hi, you're listening to WXYC, I'm Amy from the Indigo Girls, blah, blah, blah. And we would do like 50 IDs at one station. It was like a dentist appointment or something for like all the stations that company owned in the whole country. And we weren't even getting played on the stations. It was just like an insurance policy just in case we broke, that they would have an ID from us. So it's obviously a very business-like. Local news programming and live DJs are also an endangered species now. A majority of the programming is decided from a sterile central headquarters that's actually located outside of the community. And this includes choosing the playlist, which is strategically chosen by a team of market researchers. The new mergers created a huge national media companies that are gold mines for the advertisers. And the advertisers increasingly rule the roost in radio. Because one company can own 8 stations with different formats in a given locale, there's no investment in the integrity of the format. Each format is just a way to access a different demographic for the advertisers. So a company would have no problem, like say, owning an alternative rock station as well as a right-wing Rush Limbaugh talk radio station. When I did talk to music directors about this, and I have at length for the past couple of years, they shake their heads and they tell me the radio is a business now. And they have a real sense of demoralization, but not a spirit of revolution. I want to talk about the position of women in radio, because I think it's precarious, because it's an anti-artist environment. Women are either seen as a trend, something to make money off of, or a backlash. If one company owns 100 stations and they don't think women will sell, you won't get played on any of them. Women have been shut out of rock radio now. Sure, there are other formats like AAA, but if a woman wants to be loud, she is relegated to the underground. During the trend of women in rock, women still took less than half the airspace on rock radio. The women-friendly formats like AAA and Adult Alternative actually don't sell CDs. They're not considered to be tastemakers. They don't help you get into Rolling Stone. They're not sort of on the cultural cutting edge of things. So they're sort of like the submissive formats. Top 40 in country sort of brings more equity, but it's equal opportunity objectification, and probably in more demeaning ways for women than men. So why are women getting shut out of rock radio? Is it a backlash from Lilith? Did men get scared when women started gaining ground? Is there an irrationality in the decisions made by male-led advertising industry? Rock stations claim to be serving a male demographic, and maybe they are, but do guys really want to hear the same 25 songs all week and the sexist morning talk shows? Actually, Susan Flutie questions whether the majority of the audience really is male. She suggests that we use the Freedom of Information Act to gain access through the FCC to the actual demographic research that's been done by these stations. Could the advertisers be ignoring the fact that 75% of the consumer base is women? Here are some things I suggest that we do. I think we should organize in our communities and protest homogenized radio stations. If one of your stations sort of goes bad, like let's say you have a great rock station that normally has local programming as part of their week-long programming, and they would maybe support your community scene, and they all of a sudden drop it because their company tells them they need to. I think it's a good thing to protest that. It happened in Atlanta, and we didn't protest it. And we really suffered from it. And I think it might have made a difference. Now, I think we can write letters to the parent companies of these corporations. And I know at first it may be laughed at and kind of balked at because it's a business to them and they do research and the advertisers buy ads and spend money. But I think if we do it enough, there might be an impact. I think we need to say, this isn't what we want. Women and men need to say this. And one of the most promising movements against corporatized radio is actually the low-power FM movement. In response to the blunders of the Telecommunications Act, the FCC actually decided to make available licenses for low-power community radio. And this would include stations that broadcast in other languages, stations that have a lot of political content, stations that play bluegrass or jazz or punk or, really heavy metal, like whatever the community sort of deems that it wants to hear. Despite public support and approval of this initiative, the National Association of Broadcasters actually funded legislators who are still looking for ways to gut the program. We can help ensure that these licenses actually go through simply by voting for candidates that are pro-low power FM. And I don't know how many of you are from Seattle, but your man, Slade Gordon, who's running, he's one of the major opponents of low power FM, and he's been very instrumental in fighting it. And so I urge you to get out and vote. And I urge you to get out and vote in the presidential election because you know, Gore and Nader have both spoken in favor of low power FM specifically, and they know about the issue. And this can really change. This can mean that your community might have, you know, a 1,000-watt station, and it's not going to create this huge, like, oh, all of a sudden we can hear all this great music. But what it is going to do is it creates this sense of, I guess, of dissatisfaction that's more apparent to the main radio stations, and it creates a little more competition, and I think it will help a little bit with the consolidation. The next part of this is media, and I can only talk about media in light of my own career. Indigo Girls, with 20 years of playing together and platinum records and touring and all this stuff, never been featured in a mainstream rock press magazine, and I'm talking about Spin, Rolling Stone, etc. It's okay, I'm not. I just needed to make that point for the speech. I'm also told that the reason, I'm told the reason for our lack of press is our lack of radio play, but I know that it's the fact that we're political lesbians. I would say that this image problem actually affected radio first, which in turn affected our access to the media. Mainstream media has really become reactionary rather than any kind of tastemaker or nurturer. Both claim to be market-driven and to be giving the public what they want, but the public is apparently white males who are obsessed with the new beast on the block, the Maxim magazine. This is the single most successful men's magazine, and its formula is Alyssa Milano in a bikini on the cover. If you have thumbed through Revolver or Rolling Stone lately, you'll probably see Maxim's influence on these magazines. Susan Faludi reminds me that 90% of the stories in the big corporate media world are still written by straight white men. These men identify with the power structure, the top 25% of the country. They have no interest in stories on social justice, women, or minorities. And even most of the women in positions of power have no real feminist agenda. They rose to the top on the feminist premise of equal opportunity, but left behind the part about community transformation. I know there's some good writers too, so yay for the good writers. If you are a journalist, this is pointed at you too to try to change that, because I think women are afraid sometimes to make business decisions and assert themselves in that way, and I think it's okay. You know, I think we can change this. So I want to say that this is true of the big corporate media, but actually the smaller media environment is a lot more accessible to us. I talked to Vicki Starr at Girly Action, and she pointed out that she actually sees press as being a huge opportunity for women on a smaller level, and I mean zines, daily newspapers, art press, local music magazines, and most of all, the internet. I think we should seek this press out, and I think we should support it. I think we should support those magazines when possible, buy ads, write for them, do interviews. I think we should also ask ourselves, do we really want to be part of Rolling Stone if we don't really agree with the agenda? At the same time, do we resign ourselves to never having mass exposure? That's a question we should ask ourselves. The internet is something I just want to briefly touch on. I'm friends with Jennifer Toomey, who ran Simple Machine. She's an amazing woman, and she's sorry she couldn't be here actually at the conference. But we talked about internet a lot, because I think internet, it's not been locked down yet. It's still like a huge organizing tool, but it will be locked down if we don't get involved, because right now there's some very important battles going on where things are being decided about who's going to be in control of things like digital royalties, in control of distributing these. I just want to take a few seconds, or not minutes actually, to tell you about something kind of technical. There's this thing in 1998 called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and what it did is it established the fact that there is a digital royalty. And it said that that digital royalty, 50% of it should go to the copyright owner, which is usually the major label, and 50% should go to the performer. An agency was never named to collect these royalties yet. So the RIAA, which is really a coalition of major labels, wants to be the collection agency. Now, nothing against, it's just a different world. It's not It's that they should not have, that should not be something they have power over, because the internet is traditionally an underground, a subculture medium. It's something that the independent artists should take for themselves. And one of the things that would be really negative about this is that the indie artist would actually have to go to something that's really a coalition of major label interests to collect their royalties. And they don't have their best interest at heart. Also, a lot of the major labels have been heard to say that they don't think that that digital money is actually part of the recording contract and therefore may not be owed to the artist. Now this is very important for us to get involved in, because if you are a major label artist, it really impacts you, because your contract may not deal with that. And if you're an indie artist, it impacts you because they may not give you your money. So the track record of the RIAA has been pretty bad in informing indie artists of money that it owes. An example, there was an Audio Home Recording Act that created a tax on digital mediums. So this came along with the DAT tapes and all the advent of recording digital. Money goes into a fund from each sale, and it's supposed to be distributed by the RIAA. No one knows about this, because you have to apply for the money, and no one was told they have to apply. So actually, you know, none of us indie artists are probably getting any money either. The amount of money you get is measured by SoundScan sales. So we all know what that means. That means that half of the indie stores don't count, or 75% of them probably. So basically what I'm saying about the internet is that there's a lot of, it's heated up, you know, with Napster and like who has what, who's in control of what, and I think we need to learn about it. Now, there is a website called thefutureofmusic.com. It's a great website. You should go to that, and you can learn a lot more than what I can tell you, because I don't know much about the internet, so except for what I've said. So it's thefutureofmusic.com, and there's going to be actually a conference in January in DC that you can learn about more stuff like this. So maybe look that up. The last thing I want to talk about is touring. That's my favorite thing. Touring is a frontier that we can claim. While promoters don't necessarily have artists' best interests at heart, you can create your own tour structure. Now, I know this is in light of the fact that all the promotion companies are owned by the same company now, but there's still indie promoters, and there's still clubs, and there's some great people out there that are really into music running the touring circuit. Besides using the internet, I think touring is my biggest suggestion for how to build your career. Whether you're on a major label or an indie label, bands that do well are bands that tour. And I've totally discovered this through the Indigo Girls. I mean, we virtually have had a media blackout and a radio blackout this year, but we toured, so we're okay. And we love touring, you know? So if you love it, you gotta do it. And with Damon Artist on my label, I mean, it is just like so direct. It's like, if you tour, you sell records. If you don't sell records. It's that simple. And if you tour, you eventually build a following, and you can make a living doing what you love to do. And I think that's really great. So I think the live music experience can not be replaced by new technology. I think there's an emotional. I think when you gather to hear music, I think it's sort of a form of rebellion in a way, if you're in the right infrastructure. You know, it depends on the band, I guess. If you tour, you are really in control of your own career. You don't need radio play. You create word of mouth and a following, and every time you hit a town, there's a reason to write about you. So what I suggest is when you go to a town, you contact the local newspaper, the art paper, you try to get an interview, you contact the local community station, you use friends in that town to put posters up everywhere, and you make sure that you leave some music behind, a CD or a tape or something with the people that you play for, and it will increase your visibility. Tour followings are more hard-won, but they're also more loyal and consistent than radio followings. Grateful Dead is a good example of that. No radio, but a huge audience. Your crowd won't reduce you to one hit. If you can't get a gig, create one. That's in the form of these new house concerts. It's a great thing. This is actually the way they did it a long time ago, when I wasn't born yet. And the way they do it in Europe, a lot on the jazz scene, house concerts. It's really cool. If you don't know about that, I don't know what to tell you about that, but I'm sure somebody you know knows. And you should really investigate it. It's cool. You can actually make enough money to take you from one place to the other doing that. It's on the internet.
Houseconcerts.com.
The other thing I found really handy was swapping gigs. That's how me and Emily did it. We would, this band Driving and Crying, playing in Athens. We couldn't break into that scene. We were just an Atlanta band, so Athens was open to us by trading gigs with Driving and Crying. It was very helpful. And then you should trade gigs with somebody else and help them out. You really need to nurture your community and keep this up and share databases. I mean, I think we should be sharing databases about the tour circuit. I think that's important. Also, you can play at parties. You know, college campuses are great. If you go to college, your campus is like the fertile ground of playing. Just play. You know, don't play for money, just play, you know. And I think the way to start is to focus on a few cities that have a really good independent infrastructure, meaning they have a good magazine, a good community radio station. And just start one city at a time and slowly build a following up. And I would say that another thing you need to do is to make sure you know about sound systems, the technicalities behind that, because a lot of times you're going to get to a club and the sound system doesn't work, or the monitors aren't hooked up right, and sometimes the person running it doesn't know how to run it. Me and Emily used to carry our own system with us and just ran it from the stage. It was really cheap, and sound equipment is cheap now. And that way, if we got to a club and the sound system was really screwed, we just plugged in our own. And so that's an idea, especially if you're a singer-songwriter. So, in conclusion, I want to say that my main message is that we have to protect and nurture our indie community. And I'm saying this from the perspective of an independent label owner. And also, I'm going to have a solo record on my indie label. So I am an indie artist. I think we should nurture our community because it's our environment. I think as women artists move up the corporate ladder, the atmosphere gets more toxic and more anti-woman. Thus, I see the underground, meaning the internet, independent media, community radio, and indie labels as being our lifeblood. We need to nurture and support the independent women-run music community, which is why I think conferences like rockrgrl are important. And, you know, am I saying not to be on a major label? No, I don't believe in limiting yourself. But I also don't believe that being an independent artist should necessarily be equated with being limited. As we gain access to the mainstream, I think we need to do it on our own terms. Thanks, y'all. I'm gonna play a couple songs. Actually, I'll just play. Maybe I'll just play one. Let's see. We'll see if this is gonna work. I should have brought my own sound system. I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's totally fine. You know, one thing I want to say about rockrgrl, and this is just a suggestion I have for Carla too, I think it'd be really cool, I was thinking about this, is that a lot of these festivals like South by Southwest all of a sudden become sort of like breeding grounds for major label artists, and I think that's because sometimes indie labels can't afford, you know, maybe to get there sometimes, I mean, or indie artists can't. I think it'd be cool if we like tried to encourage starting a scholarship fund. Basically, major labels should be funding these damn things because they're like farm clubs. I mean, really. They should be funded by companies that are cool, and we should give scholarships out. I think that'd be good. So I want y'all to think about that.
With its little magnets
marketplace. But I'm a demographic-based disgrace and a stupid secret white boy handshake I'll never be part of. So when it's DJ Blow in the morning show, I give you 100 reasons to just say no. I said, come on girls, let's go right now. Oh, 'cause lucystoners don't need boners. Ain't no man could ever own her. Get the boys have the nerve to give the girls what they deserve. Lucystoners don't need boners. Ain't no man could ever own her. With the girl, she had the nerve to give the boy what they deserve. Yeah. Ah! Woo-hoo!
On the solo album? Amy's got a solo album coming out March 6th with the Butchies. So that's awesome. Well, you know what? If this one's on, you want this one and then I'll do this one.
Okay.
All right.
We're going to do just a couple of questions. I don't know, how much time do we have?
We got about 10 minutes.
So if you
We
guys
thought
have
we'd
any
just maybe
questions.
field some questions and see. So, anyway, you in the back. Hi, lady.
I do public radio as an independent host and producer.
Great.
Basically, I bought my own time with public radio satellite, so I have complete control of everything. 4 o'clock today, please keep it down.
Great.
What I'm asking
You don't have to ask a question. This can also be a forum for announcements. I'm open to
what I'm asking is, I'm going to get with you maybe in just a few minutes to talk about low-power radio and the piracy that we've been trying to come together and get basically legalized so we don't have to be pirates anymore. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm going to talk about that.
All right.
I actually, it's kind of an announcement about a house concert. There's a house concert venue that my partner and I do this volunteer run called the Rose Street House of Music. Yeah! There's songwriters, it's all women. There's also workshops and jams and music and stuff like that.
Cool.
So,
Rose Street?
That's in Berkeley. Okay, if we could just kind of keep it also just to questions instead of announcements. Is that all right? All right. I guess people can answer. Take it back. Another announcement.
No, my question is, could you lead us all in some kind of a musical song so we could just...
yeah.
What we
Do you know Kumbaya?
Oh no, you know, most of those sing-alongs are actually Emily's songs. I swear to God, I don't understand it, but she can write that one line that everybody's going to sing, and everybody just looks at me when I sing, just like...
Hi, it's a pleasure to hear you again. I heard you at the Crocodile when you did your launch a couple of years ago, and that was great. It's great to see you doing this. My question for you is, I am an independent label owner, CEO of the label, and we got our first round of major funding, Gary GC Records Interactive, and we're being highly supportive of artists offering stock option plans and master reversion early and all sorts of things, trying to be conscious of the new economy. But the challenge that we face is distribution. And distribution is generally still controlled by the major labels. Do you have any suggestions as an independent label owner also, how we can form alliances together to work on this stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, distribution's hard. I've been through a lot of distributors with Damon, to be honest with you. I mean, I started out with Rough Trade a long time ago, and they went bankrupt. I'm with Nail currently,
Yeah,
in
so are we.
Northwest, and I think they're good. And what I did is I did a non-exclusive deal so that I could go through other distribution networks like Carrot Top, maybe in the Chicago area.
Okay.
I think that the way to build support around that between independent labels is to probably, you know, make sure that we're all rallying for the distributor to actually do what they say they're going to do. Yeah. But I think it's in support of the distributors. I think it's very hard. It's a very hard job, and because brick and mortar stores, while they're still selling the majority of records, are, you know, losing some business. So I'll think about that, because, you know, my distribution anxieties have been huge. You know, and I'm happy now, though. Yeah. Because I think you have to stay with this. I think you have to find a distributor that is willing to grow and evolve with you and stay with them for a long enough time.
You know, and we are with Neil also, and we feel the same way. I'm glad.
I mean, I was with Koch, and who could be great, but they were too big for me. So.
Okay, I think we have time for one last one. Jim, I'm letting Jim go.
All right.
Amy, you've been very outspoken throughout your career about social and political concerns, environmental and indigenous people. And yet you were silent today when you talked about the elections, except that Al Gore and Nader have supported low power radio. And, you know, it is this is a swing state.
Yeah.
And you have always been outspoken about these.
Well, I'll tell you, Jim. Let's go out back. No. You had to do this. I knew you were going to do it. I was trying to avoid this.
Okay, next question.
Me and Emily, we very early in our career made a point that we will never do candidate endorsements, because I believe people should pay attention to the issues. And in saying that, let me just say that I think it's important to look at what state you're in and which way it's going to go, and vote intelligently. And I think the nation has actually written some really great articles on how to keep the idea of a Green Party and Al Gore and Bush and everything in your head all at the same time, and be zen about it. And not get like so angry at somebody because they're voting for Nader, and not get so angry because they're voting for Gore. It's like, you know, or Bush for that matter. It's like, just be zen. But I think just as important as a presidential election is the representative elections and local community initiatives and referendums and stuff. So especially for gay and environmental reasons. So, all right, one more, and then I think Carl is throwing us out.
Yep. Go ahead. No, you're turning around.
I love the name of your band and the name of the conference. It all works for me. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what your interaction has been in the industry with the use of girl versus the use of women.
Oh, that's a long one. Yeah, when we started, we had all these people mad at us because we didn't call ourselves Indigo Women. And it didn't work for me. I love the word girl. I have no problem with it, so I don't really care about that. I had a friend that kept saying she didn't know about feminist or anything, and she's like, Indigo with women with a Y. What's that? Yeoman. What is that? Just keep that in mind.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.